This video is sponsored by Surfshark. On the Walt Disney Company's Investor Day event of December 10th of 2020, Kathleen Kennedy announced with great pride and fanfare that Lucasfilm would be producing the movie adaptation of Tomi Adeyemi's young adult novel Children of Blood and Bone. At the time, it was described as a passion project for Mrs. Kennedy, and as a means to diversify Lucasfilm with new IP beyond Star Wars. But little more than a year later, on January 12th of this year, Deadline Hollywood broke the scoop that Paramount would be taking over the production, as they had acquired the rights after Disney allowed them to lapse. Later, The Hollywood Reporter followed up that Lucasfilm would be sticking with Star Wars and not do any new IPs, meaning that in the span of just 1 year, Lucasfilm had shifted their focus by 180 degrees. What could have happened to precipitate such a drastic change? In this video, we will begin by breaking down just that, as well as what we have been told about Kathleen Kennedy's current level of influence at Lucasfilm now that Bob Iger is out of the company for good. And finally, the rumors that Jon Favreau might be Disney's new creative consultant, and how that might influence matters going forward. Obviously, we'll spend some time talking about Kathleen Kennedy, and by now, that is a name that many a fan gets so frustrated by merely hearing that it causes an urge to cancel the Disney Plus subscription and take to the high seas instead. That, of course, is something that neither Midnight's Edge, our sponsors, nor any other affiliates condones. Not only is piracy wrong, you would be exposing yourself to endless spyware, tracking software, and other malware out there on the high seas. And that's on top of all the data that is stolen from you during all your regular browsing. But modern problems require modern solutions, and many of them can be found in a VPN, such as the one delivered by this channel's sponsor, Surfshark. A VPN, or Virtual Private Network, is a privacy protection tool which guarantees instant online safety and encrypts all data sent via the internet. On top of that, Surfshark allows you to bypass geo-blocking restrictions by changing the country you access the internet from, which also gives you access to 15 different Netflix libraries by simply changing your virtual location. Not only that, outside of the US, Star, the international version of Hulu, comes bundled with Disney+. If you're in the US and change your location to, say, the UK, well then you just might get that too. One of the advantages with Surfshark over many other VPN providers is that it allows one account to be used on unlimited devices. That's part of the reason why Surfshark is the VPN of our choice, and it gets even better. If you type in the code MIDNIGHT when ordering, that triggers an exclusive offer in which you now get 83% off the normal list price, plus 3 extra months for free. Surfshark also offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk in trying it out. Do check out the link in the description below for further details and to order. Thanks to Surfshark for sponsoring this video, and with that, let's get back to the rise and fall of Kathleen Kennedy's passion project, Children of Blood and Bone at Lucasfilm. Children of Blood and Bone is the first book in a trilogy of young adult novels, the final installment of which has yet to be published, by Nigerian-American novelist Tomi Adeyemi. The books are inspired by Harry Potter and West African culture, most notably Yoruba culture. Thinking this had the potential to be the next Hunger Games, the movie rights were optioned by Fox back in 2017, but when Fox was acquired by Disney, all development came to a screeching halt. For the next couple of years, the project languished at Disney-owned Fox, right up until Kathleen Kennedy learned of it and lobbied to have the by then dormant option shifted over to Lucasfilm, where she would personally oversee development of it. According to our sources, this would have happened in the latter half of 2020, as this was the time frame when Kathleen Kennedy decided it was time to diversify Lucasfilm's output beyond the likes of Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Willow, and anything else that sprang from the imagination of George Lucas. One possible reason for why Kathleen Kennedy wanted to push Lucasfilm beyond George Lucas could be that she was trying to put her own stamp on the company. Another reason we have heard, and not necessarily a conflicting one, is that at this time, Kathleen Kennedy had already ran Star Wars into the ground. The Rise of Skywalker was already out and creatively a disappointment, but the Skywalker moment in The Mandalorian had not yet happened. She was still overseeing the publishing initiative The High Republic. She was still overseeing the development of Leslie Headland's Acolyte series for Disney+. She was also scrambling to reconfigure Obi-Wan after the revelation finally dawned on someone that it was too much like The Mandalorian way too late in the game. She was overseeing the Andor series, which needed extensive reshoots, and lest we forget, she is still overseeing the next Indiana Jones movie, which is its own particular brand of production hell. But beyond that, her power had been significantly cut back. Jon Favreau was doing his own thing over on The Mandalorian, which at this time still hadn't won audiences over, and Bob Iger had taken charge over Star Wars films, rejecting every pitch she sent his way, because, as he had already made plain in the trades, the buck stopped with him where Star Wars was concerned. On top of it all, there was at this time indications that audiences were a bit over Star Wars, so between that and having her influence over Star Wars cut back, Kennedy shifted her attention to something else where she wouldn't be so restricted. This, then, is allegedly what motivated the desire to diversify Lucasfilm beyond George Lucas. The sources we have heard from cannot conclusively say if Kathleen Kennedy found and pushed Children of Blood and Bone before or after the September 2020 issue of GQ magazine, the one in which John Boyega went public about the sidelining he felt his character Finn had been subjected to in the sequel trilogy. But they do opine that in light of the allegations posted there, Children of Blood and Bone was a very convenient passion project for Kathleen Kennedy to push, but she wouldn't push for it all that hard. No movie happens all on its own. In order to actually overcome all the hurdles of development and make it all the way to the big screen, there needs to be a producer there who is pushing the project forward every step of the way. In a sense, every movie needs to be someone's passion project. But Children of Blood and Bone was only Kathleen Kennedy's passion project for so long. In their breakdown of events, The Hollywood Reporter wrote, "The project stalled. Sources contend that Lucasfilm brass let development languish as the studio turned its focus to its rapidly growing Star Wars series slate, which includes not only more Mandalorian seasons, but the Book of Boba Fett and numerous others. Things began to sour just months after the 2020 Disney Investor Day presentation. You will recall, that is when Children of Blood and Bone was first announced to the public. The very next week, however, the Season 2 finale of Jon Favreau's The Mandalorian was released. Titled The Rescue, that was the episode in which Luke Skywalker brought Star Wars back from the brink and into the public consciousness again. According to our sources, the real reason the studio, which is The Hollywood Reporter's coded way of saying Kathleen Kennedy, turned her focus towards the rapidly growing Star Wars slate was that Star Wars then suddenly seemed viable again. When that happened, she suddenly and reportedly became a whole lot less passionate about the Children of Blood and Bone. She still wanted to see the project released under Lucasfilm, but from then on, she didn't personally oversee it, as she was busy lobbying to get renewed and to take credit for and increase her influence on all things Star Wars. And we'll get back to how well that worked out in a moment, all while also being busy with Indiana Jones. That doesn't mean development on Children of Blood and Bone came to a sudden halt, but with Kathleen Kennedy shifting her attention away from it, the project no longer had a champion that would ensure every hurdle facing it was surmounted, including disagreements with the author. On that note, The Hollywood Reporter also wrote, Adeyemi, according to The Hollywood Reporter sources, grew disenfranchised with the pace of the project and began pushing for a stronger voice at the table for the adaptation of her book. The author made the case that she should be the one writing the script, a request Lucasfilm was unwilling to accommodate, sources say. But according to our sources, something else also happened between the project being announced in December of 2020 and flatlining 1 year later, namely a change in management at Disney. Apparently, the only reason Kennedy was ever allowed to announce Children of Blood and Bone at the 2020 Investor Day presentation was because Bob Iger allowed it. But in the months that followed, as we have previously covered, Bob Chapek started asserting himself and increasingly wrestled control over Disney away from Iger. We have been told from our sources that Chapek wants each division under Disney to keep their own distinct identity, and releasing other IPs under the Lucasfilm brand is not in keeping with that. Hence, even if Kennedy had remained passionate about it, actually producing and releasing Children of Blood and Bone under the Lucasfilm banner would likely have been blocked by the Chapek administration. What it all boils down to is that when the original option lapsed in the fall of last year, Disney chose not to renew it, leaving Paramount to pick it up instead, while Kathleen Kennedy divided her focus between Indiana Jones and trying to reinsert herself into all things Star Wars. But how successful was she in this endeavor? We put the question to entertainment journalist Mikey Sutton of Geekosity magazine fame. We have covered numerous of his scoops before, most notable to this topic. Midnight's Edge was the first outlet to drop his scoop earlier this year that Kathleen Kennedy's contract was due to be renewed for another 3 years. Although we emphasized at the time that the renewal was done for optical and political purposes only. According to Sutton, Kennedy remains in charge at Lucasfilm, but with the caveat that she does not have the creative authority that, for instance, Kevin Feige has over Marvel. Furthermore, Sutton's sources also maintain there is a growing lack of confidence in her. Sutton did not say this, but here I would like to interject that I think it is interesting that 1 month after Bob Iger completely left Bob Chapek's Disney, replaced by Susan Arnold as the new head of the board, Sutton is suddenly hearing reports about growing lack of confidence. The audience was cut in half from the first to the last installment of the sequel trilogy, but only now, all of a sudden, lack of confidence is growing. I do not think that is a coincidence. Furthermore, Sutton reports that Disney doesn't trust her judgment in any other IPs, which again, serves to explain why Children of Blood and Bone is now with Paramount. But interestingly, they don't trust her with Lucasfilm IP either, as they are worried that any Star Wars movie made under her watch will fizzle at the box office. There haven't been many Star Wars movies made in the last couple of years, and according to Sutton's sources, you shouldn't expect any more of them in the near future either. Keep in mind, Mikey Sutton's sources were the ones who first reported that Kennedy would indeed be renewed, and now those very same sources maintain, in not so many words, that Disney does not have confidence in her. Not a great state of affairs for Lucasfilm. Someone they apparently do have faith in though is Jon Favreau. This report comes from known Disney insider WDW Pro by way of Doomcock and Valiant Renegade, and claims that Jon Favreau is up for a position as overall creative director/consultant at Disney. Call it the John Lasseter position. We asked Mikey Sutton about this, and while he too had heard the rumors, he was, at the time of making this video, not yet able to confirm, deny, or add further commentary. We expect to learn significantly more about this after the final episode of the Book of Boba Fett is out, but until then, it is certainly a positive sign for Disney that they would have him assess the creative merits of all of Disney's output. If anyone currently at Disney have proven themselves to be up for such a task, it's him. For Lucasfilm though, I do not think there can be any true recovery for as long as Kathleen Kennedy remains there. From Sutton's scoop, it is clear that she is an anchor on Star Wars, as even Disney management are hesitant about releasing any more Star Wars movies under her watch. Hopefully, they will at some point recognize that there is an obvious fix to that. For now, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comments. And before you go, remember that to help bypass quarrelsome geo-blocking restrictions, you should get Surfshark VPN. Use our code MIDNIGHT to get 83% off plus 3 extra months for free. Link is in the description.